If you walked outside 40,000 years ago, the sky would look almost the same. The ground wouldn't. Because the world ancient humans lived in wasn't the quiet, empty planet we imagine when we picture nature. It was a world still crawling with giants. Lions bigger than the ones in Africa today, bears twice the size of a grizzly, deer with antlers whiter than a car, and elephants covered in fur, standing taller than a house. We didn't inherit an empty earth. We inherited the aftermath of one that used to be full of monsters. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something that should genuinely unsettle you. Most of what made Earth feel dangerous and alive for nearly the entire span of human existence disappeared only recently, and in some places disappeared because of us. Here's the strange thing about how we think about ancient nature. We picture cave paintings, we picture mammoths, and then our brain quietly files it all under prehistoric, as if it happened in some separate, sealed-off era with nothing to do with the world we actually live in. But geologically, it wasn't that long ago. The last ice age, the Pleistocene epoch, ended only around 11,700 years ago. Humans anatomically identical to us had already existed for well over 150,000 years by that point, which means for the vast, overwhelming majority of human existence, we shared this planet with animals that today only exist as skeletons in museums. This wasn't a handful of extinct species. Between roughly 50,000 and 10,000 years ago, close to 100 entire genera of large animals disappeared worldwide. Not 100 individual species, 100 entire branches of the family tree of large mammals gone. In North America alone, somewhere around 32 to 38 genera of large mammals vanished in a window of just a couple thousand years. That's an extinction event concentrated and fast enough that some researchers describe it less like a slow fade and more like a door slamming shut. Let's actually walk through what that world looked like, region by region, starting with Ice Age Europe and Asia, the landscape most directly connected to the humans and Neanderthals we've talked about before. Picture stepping out of a cave in what's now southern France 30,000 years ago. The forests aren't like today's forests, colder, more open, closer to tundra and steppe grassland than dense woodland, and the animals moving across that landscape are almost unrecognizable compared to modern Europe. Cave lions prowled this terrain, a species closely related to modern lions, but larger and adapted to cold climates most people don't associate with big cats at all. They weren't confined to Africa's savanna. They were apex predators across Ice Age Eurasia, hunting reindeer, young mammoths, and horses across frozen plains. Cave bears shared the same caves early humans sometimes used for shelter, animals significantly larger than modern grizzly bears, with some estimates putting adult males at well over 500 kilograms. Their bones are so abundant in certain European caves that entire caverns are named after the sheer volume of cave bear remains found inside them. Then there were the herbivores, woolly rhinoceroses built like tanks, covered in thick fur grazing on the cold steppe grasses. Giant deer, sometimes called Irish elk, though they ranged across Europe and Asia, not just Ireland, carrying antlers that could span over 3 meters across, wider than most cars are long, and towering above almost everything else. Woolly mammoths, standing up to 4 meters tall, moving in herds across landscapes that today are quiet farmland and forest. This wasn't a rare sighting. This was the ordinary backdrop of daily life for tens of thousands of years. Here's the part that makes this more than speculation. We're not imagining this world. We're reconstructing it from an enormous, remarkably well-preserved body of physical evidence. Cave art at sites like Chavot Cave in France, dated roughly 30,000 to 36,000 years old, doesn't just show horses and deer. It shows cave lions, rhinoceroses, and mammoths, painted with startling anatomical accuracy by people who were clearly looking directly at these animals, not imagining them. Permafrost across Siberia has done something nowhere else on Earth can do: preserve soft tissue. Frozen mammoth carcasses have been recovered with skin, fur, and stomach contents still intact after tens of thousands of years, giving researchers direct evidence not just of what these animals looked like, but literally what they had eaten in their final days. And the fossil record itself, particularly from sites across Europe, North America, and Siberia, have allowed researchers to map out both the geographic range of these species and, using radiocarbon dating, roughly when each one disappeared. This isn't reconstructed from myth or guesswork, it's built from paint on cave walls, frozen flesh and permafrost, and bones dated with the same techniques used to date any other archaeological find. And this wasn't just a European phenomenon. Nearly every inhabited continent had its own version of this megafaunal world. In North America, giant ground sloths, some species reaching the size of a modern elephant, moved slowly through forests and plains, alongside mastodons, camels, and short-faced bears, believed to be among the largest bears that have ever existed, with some estimates suggesting they could stand over 3 meters tall on their hind legs. In South America, the landscape held creatures with almost no modern equivalent: armored, car-sized relatives of armadillos called glyptodonts, giant ground sloths even larger than their North American cousins, and saber-toothed cats stalking through forests that today look nothing like they did back then. In Australia, giant marsupials ruled instead: diprotodon, a wombat relative roughly the size of a small car, giant short-faced kangaroos taller than most adult humans, and a massive monitor lizard, Megalania, that may have rivaled some modern crocodiles in size. Different continents, different animals, but the same underlying pattern everywhere: a planet dramatically more physically dangerous, more visually overwhelming, and more biologically strange than the one we know today. But here's a detail that makes this whole story even more revealing. Africa didn't lose its megafauna the way every other continent did. Elephants, lions, rhinos, hippos, giraffes. Africa still has a version of what we're describing. Every other continent lost almost all of it. Why would one continent be the exception? The leading explanation connects directly back to the theory we're about to get into. Human ancestors evolved in Africa alongside these animals for millions of years, not tens of thousands. That means African megafauna had an enormous head start to evolve with an increasingly capable predator, developing caution, speed, and defensive behaviors around humans, gradually, generation after generation, as human hunting ability slowly increased. Everywhere else on Earth, it happened in reverse. Modern humans arrived suddenly, already fully equipped with sophisticated weapons, coordinated hunting strategies, and fire, dropped into ecosystems where the local megafauna had no evolutionary history to anything like this before. A giant ground sloth in Ice Age America had never needed to evolve a fear of spears, because nothing like a human with a spear had ever existed in its evolutionary history before. If this theory is right, it means Africa's megafauna survived not because Africa was safer or its animals were tougher, but because its animals got hundreds of thousands of years of warning that everywhere else on the planet simply never received. Try to actually sit with what that means for how ancient humans experienced simply existing outdoors.
Today, in most parts of the world, stepping outside means encountering at most something like a deer, a coyote, maybe a bear if you're deep in certain wilderness. For most people, in most places, nature is scenic. It's rarely something that could kill you in the next 10 minutes. For most of human history, that wasn't true anywhere. Walking to find water, walking to hunt, walking to simply move a family from one camp to the next, every one of those ordinary tasks carried the possibility of encountering something enormous, fast, and capable of killing an entire group of people in seconds. We tend to imagine connecting with nature as something calming. For nearly the entire span of human existence, nature was something you had to constantly, actively outthink and outmaneuver just to survive an average afternoon. And it wasn't a passive relationship. Ancient humans didn't just coexist alongside these animals. The evidence shows direct, active engagement in both directions. Archaeological sites across Europe and Siberia have uncovered structures built from mammoth bones, deliberately arranged skulls, tusks, and leg bones used to construct shelters in landscapes where wood was scarce. Entire dwellings built from the remains of the largest animals on the continent. Cut marks on megafauna bones at numerous sites across multiple continents show clear evidence of hunting and butchering, not just scavenging alone, but active, coordinated predation of animals many times the size and weight of the humans hunting them. And the danger cut both ways. Cave bear remains have been found alongside human remains in shared cave systems, and some researchers suggest that certain injury patterns on both human and animal bones may reflect direct, dangerous encounters between the two. though this remains a more debated area of interpretation than the hunting evidence itself. This wasn't humans quietly observing megafauna from a safe distance. It was humans actively hunting, building with, competing against, and sometimes dying alongside some of the largest land animals that have ever lived. And this constant proximity to enormous, dangerous animals didn't just shape how ancient humans survived, it shaped how they thought and what they chose to create. The overwhelming majority of Ice Age cave art isn't abstract pattern or decoration, it's animals. Specifically, it's disproportionately the largest and most dangerous animals in their environment. Lions, mammoths, rhinos, bison, far more often than smaller, safer creatures. Researchers have long noted that early human art seems fixated on exactly the animals that would have posed the greatest threat or commanded the greatest respect in daily life. Some researchers connect this to early spiritual and ritual behavior as well. Animal bones arranged deliberately at burial sites, animal imagery appearing repeatedly in what may be some of humanity's earliest ritual spaces. Whether these animals were feared, worshipped, or both, they were clearly central to how early humans made sense of their world. It raises an interesting possibility. Some of humanity's very first stories, first religious impulses, first attempts at art, may have been direct responses to sharing the earth with creatures large enough and dangerous enough to demand to be understood. Which brings us to the genuinely unsettling part of this story. Almost all of it is gone. Not gradually thinned out over millions of years through the ordinary churn of evolution, but wiped away in a geological instant, disappearing from most of the planet within a window of just a few thousand years, heavily concentrated around the end of the last ice age. Scientists have debated why for decades, and the honest answer is that it's still actively contested. One leading explanation is climate change. The rapid warming at the end of the Pleistocene transformed vast stretches of cold grassland steppe into forest and wetland, destroying the specific habitat many of these giant grazers depended on. But a second explanation runs directly through the humans we've been talking about this whole video, the overkill hypothesis. As modern humans spread into new continents, arriving in the Americas and Australia relatively late compared to Africa and Eurasia, large, slow-reproducing animals that had never evolved defenses against coordinated human hunting may have simply been unable to keep pace with a new, highly effective predator arriving all at once. The timing is what makes this theory so compelling and so unsettling. In many regions, the extinction of local megafauna lines up disturbingly closely with the first evidence of human arrival. Not always exactly, and not everywhere, but close enough that it's remained one of the leading explanations for decades. Most researchers today land somewhere in between the two theories. Not pure climate, not pure human hunting, but a combination. Animals already pushed toward the edge by a rapidly changing climate, encountering a new, unusually effective predator at exactly the wrong moment. Here's the part that should sit with you longest. The version of Earth you grew up thinking of as natural, forests without giants roaming through them, plains without herds of towering elephants, caves without competing predators the size of a small car, that isn't actually the natural baseline of this planet. It's the aftermath, a vastly emptier, quieter version of what Earth looked like for almost the entire time humans have existed. We didn't inherit an untouched wilderness. We inherited what was left after the giants disappeared, and depending on which theory you believe, we may have had a direct hand in making sure they did.